Today we have Karolin Ruehlmann with us, and she's from Berlin, and she has been a freelancer for 15 or more than 15 years, and she's going to share some lessons she learned the hard way with us today, and I think it all comes down to one big thing, which is communication. So stay tuned, and please welcome her on stage with me. Karolin.
Hi everyone, good to see you, very nice to meet you, and yeah, as I just heard, I'm the one thing that's keeping you from food, so I hope it will be worth it. Yeah, lessons learned, what freelancers should know about collaboration with companies. First of all, Antonia, thank you for your kind words already. This is always my elevator pitch to clients, like the 2 seconds, what I do, I make things happen. And this, you will notice throughout my presentation, is very much my mindset and what I want to talk to you about today. So my goal for today, after you leave the session, would be that after your project, you feel confident enough to do these things. Be best mates with the housekeepers, hopefully. Privately get dinner with the chief legal officer. Offer the do, the German you, to the board member or the CEO or whoever your manager was. And be aware of the elephant in the room. These are the 7 lessons that I condensed it to. So first, go see your client in person. Second, the working agreement. Number 3, number 1 skill we should all have, communication, as Antonia already mentioned. Then number 4, build better relationships. Number 5, work ethic. Number 6, the elephant in the room that I mentioned earlier. And number 7, afterwards is always before. So when I thought about the title, like what should we know about collaboration with companies, I was like thinking, like, who is companies? Like, who are we talking about? And I can only speak from my personal experience, of course, and these are the types of companies that I worked for. So I worked for startups and corporates, big corporates, small corporates, DAX companies, whatever. Then all kinds of agencies, and also public companies or political institutions that have a very different setup, as some of you might know. And then another factor that we need to pay attention to is, of course, cultural and religious context. So is it an international company? Middle Eastern companies work differently than European companies, than American, than Asian. I think you're all aware of this. And then very important, of course, also mindset. Like, do the companies have a more traditional mindset, or are they comfortable with new work? So I think all of these factors really play into the lessons that I'm telling you here. So take everything with a grain of salt for, like, in this context, basically. Number 1, go see your client. So I think also the session earlier, like we're all, I think most people become freelancers because being digital nomad is super interesting, right? And we all think like, oh, great, remote, everything can be done. But I would really ask you, like, go see your client. Especially in the beginning for the first meetings, make a strong impression. And also show your commitment by just showing up and spending time to get to know them. You want to get to know them, but also they want to get to know you. They also just, want to feel your energy. Like, who are you? Who's that person? Who am I working with for a couple of months? Whom am I giving the super important project to? And an example for myself is really like, I would say 90% of, like, whenever I had initial calls or video calls, 90% of the time it didn't work out. But whenever I saw them in person, it almost every time worked out. So for me personally, it really makes a huge difference, because again, it's about you show them, I'm committed, I'm making this time investment. So it really also comes down, again, to time investment, even unpaid. So especially these initial meetings, I wouldn't put them on the timesheet, right? I'd be very genuine with my time here, getting to know them, talking to them, just feeling how the vibe is, and if you, like, getting to know if you want to spend time working with them. I personally, I don't spend time with like pitching events or like doing upfront concept work where, they can then compare whom of the consultants they like. I don't do this personally, but I would always be very generous with my time when just meeting or talking to them or getting a coffee. So really, I would really, wherever in the world you work, go see your client, especially in the beginning. At least once, I would really ask for repeatedly, but especially in the beginning, I think also spending some time with them, getting to know them, working with them together for a couple of weeks really makes a big difference. A working agreement. So this is a bit of a more boring admin topic. So your contract, of course, it will take longer. Like if you work with a corporate company, it will take longer to get this contract than, for example, getting it from a startup. If you're working with a public company, it might even take even longer, because maybe you even have to go through like a tender process, which can take a couple of weeks and is very bureaucratic. So be prepared that it can take a couple of weeks. Stay in touch with them, still show that you're interested. Also just be very honest if you have a deadline to communicate that with them. But yeah, again, depending, it can take a little bit of time. It can take some weeks. So be prepared for that mentally. In general, I would suggest don't start working without a contract. Have I done it? Yeah, once. Would I do it again? Yeah, I already see faces like, oh yeah, shit, I've done that as well. You know, it's always like, if we have a client, they always want us to start yesterday, right? But I also believe if they want you to start yesterday, they can also pull off this contract. So really, try to not work without a contract. I had a very big client, very, very bureaucratic. They pulled off the contract within 24 hours, and then months later, the purchasing department told me that never happened before. So if they want this, they can make it happen, right? So really, if they want you, they should also make the necessary steps for that. So wait for it. Payment. I would suggest a monthly payment schedule, just also from personal experience. I think if you work for 6 months and then send a big invoice, and then, oops, the company can't pay, you'll have a problem. So really agree on a monthly payment schedule. I think it's also nice because you can send your timesheet. Everyone can be very transparent about what you're working on, what the agreement is. So yeah, I'd suggest monthly payment schedules. And then in terms of contract, really pay attention to the contract. If you don't know the legal terms, get someone to look at it with you, especially termination clauses. It's great for you if you have a 2-week termination clause, because if you don't like this anymore, you can get out in 2 weeks. But it's also for the client, right? If they want to stop this and you don't have a new project lined up, it can end in 2 weeks. So really be cautious here and read it properly. In terms of rate, I'll not go into the rate discussion. Just in general, my personal experience, never work for a rate that you're unhappy with. Of course, you have to make your calculation, and maybe for an NGO or for a younger startup, you work for a lower rate, and then for a corporate that makes a lot of money, you get a higher rate. But in general, my experience is if you're not motivated, if the rate just is not good, then I think it really shows in your work. So what I'm trying to say is learn to negotiate and really get to know your own worth. And then your assignment will basically be written down in the contract, which is very important. But then I guarantee you the assignment and your tasks will change throughout the project. So you don't have to necessarily change the contract. I think it's fine if you, for example, just write it down in an email and ask your client to confirm, just so everyone is on the same page, and you don't have any surprises later on where someone is like, why are you doing this work? We never asked you to. So I think it's always nice to have something written if there's like major changes. In terms of, again, things change. So I think also maybe the expectation of what you're doing might change. Be very upfront about what your expertise is. If there's a new task that you don't feel super comfortable, or like it's not your expertise, just tell your client so they can also get someone new on board and you don't spend too much time, for a rate that maybe someone else would do double the work in. And then I think super important for me is also discussing the expectation of presentation and delivery. So basically, how should your deliverable look like? what should you focus on? Where should it be perfect? Because we all know the last 20% of like perfecting something will take you the longest time, right? Like the 80% is quick, and then the last 20%, it will take a lot of time. So I made the experience, it was really like a lesson for me where it was a big company. We worked on a hardware prototype, and the board member who was overseeing the project, we presented it to the entire board, and it was like based on this, they made the decision for the next 10 years of the company strategy. And he really upfront told us, from the outside, it can look like Frankenstein. Like he literally said, Frankenstein. No one should get hurt, but it can look messy. From the inside, though, it has to be perfect. And this really stuck with me, because I think it's super important, because it really gives you a clear focus on this is where you have to put your attention to. So I ask this to every client that I work with, and I also tell this to all the teams that I work with, like this is what we want to focus on. All of this is really like go the extra mile, right? Again, a little bit depending on your rate and on your setup. Maybe you can't spend another 30 minutes talking to them for free, but I would really urge you to spend time, get to know them, and just build a relationship with them. This comes down to the number one skill, communication. And maybe some of you in the room, I don't know what you're all doing, but maybe someone who's working in more tech or products, like I'm not a communicator, I'm not in marketing, why should I be caring about communication? But I think it really should be our number one skill. And also, I really think we should be proactive and transparent. Don't make your client wonder what you're working on, but be upfront of giving status updates, right? Never have them wonder what you're spending your time on, basically. So make your work transparent, send work updates, highlight if there's roadblocks coming up or if there's challenges coming up. So, and really also communicate with your stakeholders, right? Even if you don't have an answer, don't hide that email in your inbox and reply 15 days later once you have the answer. Rather tell them like, hey, I don't know, I'll find out, I'll come back. So really be proactive and don't keep them waiting for information, basically. This is especially important in terms of like political awareness. So be aware of internal politics, stay away from it, but learn to navigate around it, right? And learn how to maneuver it. And if we're talking about political stakeholders, because again, maybe political institutions are involved in your project, learn what they need. Learn to communicate with them. They might need different updates, and they might need, maybe they'll just reach out every week. So don't ignore them, talk to them, build a connection with them, because you want to have a strong bond with them. The last point, I think, very important for all of us, learn how they communicate and collaborate. So I think especially in the first days or weeks, depending how long your assignment is, I think you should really spend the time to observe, ask questions, talk to everyone, learn about everyone's point of view to really understand what's happening here. You can really take this opportunity also with your learnings to a couple of weeks later, for example, give a presentation with what you understand is happening. And I think it's always interesting for the team to be like, oh, this is what the newcomer feels is happening, because maybe it's totally different from what they're expecting is happening. So I think this is really valid to also share this insight. And if you have the feeling, this is chaos, everyone has a different point of view, no one really knows what's happening, suggest a strategy workshop. Most likely, most corporates especially will be like, oh, we don't have time. Our schedules are full, we have meetings all day long, we can't take a day to strategize. And I think that's exactly when they should strategize, right? You might know this saying, if you don't have 10 minutes, if you don't have time to meditate 10 minutes a day, then you should meditate 2 hours. So I think that's exactly the same thing that should happen with strategy workshops. because it seems everything is so chaotic that you actually need to sit down and align on what's actually happening and what our goal is. So really push for that. Like whenever I didn't push for it, I regretted it afterwards. So I'd really recommend this. Oh, sorry, I went back here. Then in general, I think also you should just learn, like yourself, or you personally learn about communication styles and communication concepts, something like nonviolent communication, for example, to really also reflect your own communication style and learn about yourself, how people perceive how you communicate. And then same for leadership styles. Learn about different leadership styles and concepts, because it will help you understand your client and how they make decisions. Build better relationships. Very passionate about this one, because, yeah, as you already can hear, I think, it's really about working with human beings in everything that we do. And first of all, I would say really know your stakeholders. Really understand who, how, why, what's their involvement, who's making decisions. And as mentioned before, even if you don't have all the answers, don't let them wait. Just write them an email, tell them you don't know, but you'll find out. Because in the end, I just experienced this myself. Make them your ally, right? Build strong bonds with them, because it will help you further down the line. If they understand you're responsive, you see them, and you see them as a stakeholder, they will also help you further down the line. Then, who of you in the room made the experience that CEOs or your managers or decision makers, they never really update their tasks in Jira or Asana or Notion? Who made that experience? Yeah, me too. So get their number, right? So learn their favorite way of communication. This is always one of the first questions that I ask them. How do you want to communicate with me? How do I get stuff out of you? How do I get decisions from you? So most of the times, especially with like high-level managers, they prefer to text, WhatsApp, call. So get their telephone number. Of course, then be cautious with it. Like, don't bother them, but like be very focused with what you need from them. Give them the information you need and tell them what decision exactly you need. So I'd really vote for get their telephone number. And I think it's a very important question in the whole team to ask, how do you prefer to communicate? So for me, for example, everyone has my telephone number, and I'm like, just call me. So most likely also now my phone, like, because I'm in the middle of a project and we're like close to delivery, so everyone's just calling me if they need something. For me, that's better, because then I don't spend 3 hours tomorrow morning answering emails. Again, get to know how you like to do it, but think about it. Then your best mates, staff, housekeeping, security, cleaning, anyone supporting operations. And I really mean this genuinely, like really, really genuinely. Do the same as what you did with the CEOs, right? Talk to them. Have a chat, speak their language, learn about their kids, about their dog, about the vacation that's coming up. Build bridges and make them your ally, because it will open doors that you need. Also here, I made that experience in the mentioned hardware project, where one of the security guys, he literally opened doors and elevators for us that we needed, that we weren't allowed to use. And also another example was we needed a screwdriver, and in that company, you needed to have written permission to use a screwdriver for security reasons. All good, all fine, but it would have taken days. So the security guy just gave us his screwdriver from his office, right? So that's what I mean, right? And even now, if I meet certain people on the street, we're happy to see each other. So I really mean this genuinely. I don't mean this just to make use of them, but just be interested in them as a person. And then involve legal early. If there's product or tech people in the room, I would almost expect you standing up and protesting, because I have these discussions quite often. Because I know that especially product and tech doesn't like to do this, and they like to keep legal as far away from it as possible. And then 2 days before shipping, they'd be like, hey, legal, by the way, we're going live tomorrow. And then you're surprised that legal is like, nope, we're not going live. If they don't know what's happening, they have the power to stop your project, because they need to take risk of the business, right? So if you don't involve them, if they don't know what's happening, they can't help you. So really my personal experience, and I always do this, and I always fight these fights with product and tech, involve them from the start. If they know what you're doing, they can help you. This might mean that you have to learn to speak their language so that they understand what you need from them, but it will really, they will be your biggest supporter. So really, don't shy away from it. And everyone here working in tech or product, involve them a little earlier, please, next time. They will appreciate it, and they will really help you further down the line. Work ethic. I think that's a general thing. I think as freelancers, there's sometimes companies don't like to work with freelancers because they think, oh, the people are not that loyal to the company, they don't want to be here, they just want to make money or whatever. I think it's a bit the opposite, because it really, our work has to speak for ourselves, right? So really be prepared and face challenges and roadblocks up front. We all want the project to be a success, right? That's why we're there, to make it a success. So if you see a roadblock coming up, communicate it. Don't shy away from politics maybe, but just be very smart, of course, but be true to yourself if you see something is going wrong. And then go the extra mile. I've mentioned that a couple of times. I think we can really stand out by going one step further than what we've been asked to do. As mentioned, invite the security guy for a coffee, take the CEO for a coffee, invest time, right? Maybe not necessarily paid time, but just show you're committed and you want to make this a success. In general, don't create new problems, but rather solve problems. So never go to the manager or whoever and be like, hey, there's something that I can't solve, but rather come up with suggestions of what you can do. Just act in their best interest, right? Really have this can-do attitude, be pragmatic, and make things happen. There's this Obama interview. I actually just thought about this yesterday, so I couldn't put it in the presentation anymore, where he was asked, whom would you hire for your team? What kind of education or university do you want them to be from? And he was like, well, basically the best person in the team is always the one who gets shit done, right? So be that person, get shit done. The elephant in the room. Unfortunately, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a bummer, a bit of a boring topic, a little bit of a boring elephant. Scheinselbstständigkeit. I hope that even the people in the room who don't speak German, but who work in Germany as a freelancer, know this term. There's a big panel happening on the main stage about Scheinselbstständigkeit. I think it's a bit the shadow of freelancers in Germany, and I'm not here to give you legal advice in any form. What I want to say is be aware of it. Do your homework, learn what's necessary for you, understand your personal setup so you can act accordingly, but don't ignore it. And I think here also your legal friends can come in handy, right? Because if you have questions, you can ask them. And I also had one project where it was a very long project, and legal came up to me in the end and they were like, hey, we need to see that we have to stop your assignment because else we'll create a problem. So this was really helpful for me. But again, it was because we were close with each other and transparent with each other. So they gave me this heads up. And then afterwards is always before. Actually, I missed one step. Be open about your intentions. Just mention to your client why you're here. Do you want to be a freelancer? Or would you actually be interested in working for them as an employee? Almost every client I worked for wanted to hire me as an employee. So by now, I always go in and I'm like, I don't want to be an employee for you. I want to be a freelancer. I will leave at one point, just so you know. Again, be very upfront. I think we all made this experience, as I see in your faces. I think it will help all of you to just be clear about what's happening. Yeah, I think it's just very helpful for everyone to know, because then, you know, things are clear. They know you don't want to be an employee, and it's also clearer for them to like talk about this whole Scheinselbstständigkeit topic. And now that one. Afterwards is always before. So everyone could be your new potential client. Every stakeholder, everyone you collaborated with, everyone you were in touch could be your new potential client. Do you, like maybe the sister of the security guy has a company who just needs your expertise. It's not written on his name tag, but if you talk to him, if you get to know him, you know, that could be your next potential client. And then, yeah, everything you do is your reputation. I mention the extra mile quite often. I mentioned relationship building, communication quite often. So I think this really shows, right? Everything you do is your reputation in the end. And I think you all know this saying, people will remember how you made them feel. So of course we should all deliver good work, but you should also think about how you make people feel, because this is what they will remember. We want to create value and satisfaction and trust for our client. For me personally, I would say 95% of my projects, and I've done that for 15 years now, were through recommendation. So always word of mouth. So I'm really like, I really believe this, you know, whatever you do is what people will remember about you. Yeah, that was it. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how I am in terms of time, but we'll just do questions. Thank you. Come say hi afterwards. Happy to have a chat.
Thank you so much, Karolin. You are like on fire because we have so many questions already.
Okay, wonderful.
But that's fantastic because we're good with time. So, first question was, where can I find good contract templates? Do you have any suggestions?
Good contract templates. Most of the times I get the contracts from my client, to be very honest. Again, depends a little bit on your business model. I think it's worth looking into it also in terms of Scheinselbstständigkeit and so on, to also like have your own AGBs and so on. I don't have a recommendation for this. Yeah.
Is a notice period of more than 2 weeks usually accepted by clients for freelancers?
Depends. Depends on the project, depends on the client, depends on how big the client is, on how long the project is. I think 2 weeks is pretty short. Normally I think I have 6 weeks or something. But again, it's all up to the client. Yeah.
And also up to negotiation?
Exactly, and up to negotiation, right? Like, and also honestly, like what I really believe, even if there's a 3-month period in the contract, but in the end, both parties just don't want to work together anymore, talk to them, right? Just have a conversation about it and find a solution. We're all human beings, they're all human beings. Yes, we have contracts, in terms shit goes down, but again, in the end, just have a chat, you know?
Someone says, in my experience, sometimes it's hard to get the conversations with the CEOs. Is that the case? How to lead to the communication with the managers to make them happy?
Yeah, I understand. For me, the CEOs and the board members are mostly the people who hire me because of the setup that I have in the projects. Yeah, but just don't be shy. I think in general, like, learn that we're all on eye level. You know, even if he's the board of a big DAX company and you meet him in an elevator, just have a normal chat with him. Don't be like, oh my God, you're god of this company. I really believe this in general, you know, like just we're all the same. And that's why I really also emphasize this. For me, the security guy and the cleaning lady and the people doing the food that we eat for lunch, they are on the same level as the CEO for me. So I have the same kind of conversations with them. And I think people really feel this. Yeah, not sure that helps, but it's how I do it.
There's one, it's like 3 parts. I'll just ask the first part. It's with regard to the contract. Can I state in the contract that the company will leave me a reference at the end of the project?
Can you stay in the contract?
That you would like to have a reference.
Oh, you can try, of course. You can try everything and then talk to them about it. Again, learn to negotiate. Learn what you want and then learn how to ask for it. I think it's valid to have this in the contract. Again, if you build the relationship, it shouldn't even be in the contract that you want a reference, right? So, yeah.
Someone says, thank you, very inspiring, which I can agree with.
Thank you very much. That's cool.
What are some of your regular tasks as a COO on demand? Maybe you could share a bit more about that.
Oh, making shit happen, literally. Again, whatever the assignment is, but it really depends. So I do, as you heard, like I did hardware project, I did software projects, I did we delivered like Yelby, for example, here in Berlin, which was like a 3-month project and nothing was done, and the board said, okay, it has to be done in 3 months, and I was like, cool. So then it's really like get the team together, make sure everyone knows what we're doing. In this case, for example, I've also worked with startups where I helped scale their operations. So then I come in and first of all understand what are they doing and what do we want, and then to build up operations that are scalable. I also did new market launches for products. So that's also a little bit different. So again, it's really hard to tell because very honestly, every project that I do is different. So I don't have a drawer where I can get out a template, what I do every morning, to be honest.
Thank you. What's your take on expensive certifications like Scrum PO, PMP, etc.?
Yeah, I don't have any of these, especially if you have to pay for them every year. But I know that in certain countries they are super relevant. So I know, for example, my CV in the US doesn't really work because, you know, I don't have all the fancy business degrees. I'm very much self-educated. I'm very much like I never planned to do what I do. I really it just happened, and I have this experience of 15 years now. But it's not from a university education. So again, I know in the US this doesn't really work, but I know what it works for, and I'm happy with that. So you know, I don't want to work in a surrounding where I just matter because of my degrees. That's why I also said like, I'm not investing time in writing concepts. Either you want to work with me because of what I've done and because of what you're experiencing with me, or you don't, and then that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any skills, though, that you would say recommend on working a bit more on, like facilitation, coaching, technical knowledge? Probably very individual again, but is there something a bit more generic?
I'm happy to have a chat to whoever asked this question, because yeah, let's have a chat afterwards. I think in general right now there's so much to learn, and I think we're all struggling to keep a hold of what's happening. Honestly, what I said, like communicate, relationship building, and then everything also. And I think it's a bit of a mindset, right? Do you hire for skill or do you hire for personality? I think you need to make that decision for yourself, and then you need to find the right companies who also have that mindset. That's what I said with like, I know in the US my CV doesn't really work. I'm not really interested in working with them. So, you know, I choose the people that I'm interested in working with, that I know that value my kind of expertise and my kind of working style, because it might be a bit different to other people. Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of you also have faced the situation that you as a freelancer eventually were offered a job as a full-time employee. So somebody asks that in Spain they also have that situation with the fake false self-employment situation. And how do you tell that to your client respectfully, that you're a freelancer but not a full-time employee?
Again, by now I'm very upfront in the beginning. My whole being, I'm a freelancer. So then they already know and they accept it. I'm happy to work with them, for a longer period or again and again. I think, understand why you don't want to be an employee and then just tell them. Like for myself, I know I'm not as good as an employee as I am as a freelancer because of everything that I told you, because I go the extra mile, because I also want to have the rate for the extra mile, right? I can work 24/7 if things need to ship in 3 months. Employees not necessarily do this. So I think this is also like, it's a bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset that I think we have as freelancers. And just, this is, I think every company should understand this. Like, if you want someone who works from 9 to 5, or if you need something to ship urgently, and yes, you can call me Sundays, and yes, you can call me 9 p.m. Like currently, this is what's happening all the time. I'm fine with it. This is a bit the distinction, I think. Again, if you're a freelancer, it doesn't mean you have to take calls on Sunday. I'm not saying that. You have to be clear for yourself what your boundaries are.
Great. Karolin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us. I think people, when you leave the room, definitely make sure to communicate and go the extra mile. I think that's been my biggest takeaway.
Awesome.
So thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Enjoy lunch.